Spawn camping. It's been the bane of so many multiplayer games. The idea that you spawn in and immediately die to someone is certainly not fun. The spawn camping as a topic has been around for so long, I can remember talks of it being cheap dating back to all the way back when I used to play Unreal Tournament. But games like Unreal have several spawn points, making it unlikely for you to always spawn near somebody. In terms of Splatoon, this topic has been around since the very beginning. Splatoon spawns are fixed, they always happen in the same exact spot, with these spots being accessible on most maps. For years, it's always been a debate on whether or not spawn camping a team is skillful, cheap, or unsportsmanlike. So for today's video, I want to talk a bit about this debate and how Splatoon 3 is finally fixing that issue. So let's get right into it. I've mentioned Unreal Tournament before and its spawns. How a lot of these games tend to handle their spawns is the map contains a list of spawns. Some even go further to have spawn points per team. When you die, it looks through all the available spawn areas and checks to see if an enemy is within range during this check. This check happens as you die. If it passes the check, it's deemed safe for you to spawn there. They also tend to take into account where your teammates are, favoring spawn points that also pass the check that are near teammates. Now, some of you may already picked up on where this can fail. It's in the very check the game does. They tend to occur when you die, not as you continue to await your spawn, meaning an area can pass a check, then as you spawn an enemy could be within range, which would have normally made it fail that check. This means it's still entirely possible for you to spawn in an area that an enemy would also be in. This is also a big problem for games that feature smaller maps, making it trickier for you to spawn in an area that has no immediate threat. So why do I go over this? It's important to know how other games in the genre handle spawns. Games like Call of Duty, Unreal, Quake, games that are typically labeled as arena shooters, follow this type of spawn method. Splatoon instead gives us a fixed spawn, where we'll always return to. The first time I ever recall seeing people get upset over the idea of spawn camping is actually all the way back during the original test fire for Splatoon 1. Back on the good old Squidboards forums, people were talking about if spawn camping was fair. Some people argued since it's allowed, since your spawn is accessible to the enemy team on most maps, while argue that it's just unprofessional and unsportsmanlike to spawn camp your enemy. As time goes on, this debate has never really settled. It still gets brought up. It even got brought up not too long ago, sparking me to do this very video. It was another post calling it cheap and something only bad players do. This is the part of the debate I'd argue is where most people are actually wrong. I've seen people countless times say a player who spawn camps is just a bad player who needs to spawn camp because they can't win without it. I've never actually understood this thought process because if someone's able to spawn camp, then obviously they're doing something right. Of course, it's easier to spawn camp on some maps than others, and easier with some weapons than others, but for the most part, if a player is constantly keeping you in your spawn, it's probably not because they're a bad player. We also need to take time to figure out that we're not talking about the sort of spawn camping that like a sploosh player does. That a sploosh player who runs straight at your spawn and sharks while waiting for you is not a spawn camper. That's just a thrower. A spawn camp is when you are being spawned into a fight against multiple people on the other team and it's been unable for you to leave safely from your spawn. Now, is it unprofessional and unsportsmanlike to spawn camp? That one you could make a better argument for. I'd say it is kind of unsportsmanlike to just spawn camp the entire time, but I'm also the type of person who will do whatever it takes to win. So consider me a hypocrite, but if a spawn camp is needed to ensure a win, I'd spawn camp. However, I wouldn't call it unprofessional because it's something that is allowed by the game, and what can be the thing that wins you the game. It could be pretty lame to see and have happen to you, but in reality it's a valid tactic in just about every mode. The whole point of the game is to deny movement and space on the map. Overall, I'd say spawn camping in Splatoon is in fact a valid tactic that can be frustrating to deal with, but is just a result of the game design allowing for it and the other players to perform it. Chances are, if you find yourself being spawn camped for a prolonged period of time, there was likely a gap in the skill level to begin with, as lame as that may be. But now, how is Splatoon 3 fixing it? We know from the trailers that they've made spawn completely different. No longer will we all spawn from the same point in the map, instead we spawn in the air and are given the ability to choose where we drop into the map. For what we do know, there is a little bit of the map we get to choose from. From what we see, they only opt to spawn around where I'd imagine the spawn point would have been. This still solves the issue, thankfully, as allowing the players to choose where they drop means it's up to the player to find where the safest spot would be. This could also help cut down the amount of time it may end up taking to return to the objective, which may be why they don't allow us to spawn anywhere. Ultimately, the discussion on spawn camping hasn't really changed over the years. It's almost always been a side that's argued that spawn camping is skillless, while the other side argues that spawn camping takes more skill than given credit for. And it's a bit true, anybody can spawn camp, but effective spawn camping isn't as easy. It may be seen as an easy way out to try and keep the enemy in their spawn, but in reality that's just how you win. If you can keep the enemy in their spawn, then there's a good chance the team doing the spawn camping was going to run circles around the rest of the map. Regardless, it's a good thing that it's actually being addressed in Splatoon 3. A bit of a fun fact for people who might not have been around for Splatoon 2's launch, people thought that there were actually countermeasures to spawn camping when they first showed the new spawn area. To the side of your spawn features a little meter that we now know fills up as you spawn and leave, but at the time we thought that it was something that was powering up and you could use to defend your spawn. Oh, how naive we were. Anyway, that's it for this video. What do you guys think of spawn camping? Are you glad that Splatoon 3 is shaping up to finally allow us to choose where we spawn? Let me know in the comments below, and I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.